So, Narad, welcome back
Thank you.
to our series of interviews. We are today, the 16th of November, just the day before Mother's Mahasamadhi. Let's continue with the reminiscences of your contact with the Mother and other sadhaks of the ashram. So, what are you going to tell us today?
Well, I'd like to begin with this letter because this was very early on, as you can see, in 1969. Mother put us in Promesse, and we were right next to Piero and Gloria.
Yes.
They had their room, we had ours, and then you can't even tell it now when you go because they put that toll booth and everything.
Yes.
But it was great, and that was before the structure, the Keat structure, and the kitchen and rooms were built at peace.
Okay.
So this was a very, very early on.
Yes.
And many people came and said they wanted to work with me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't know, and so I wrote to Mother, and if you could read.
So, can you give us a little bit the context? What was your question?
Okay. You see, when we came, it was so barren there. There was nothing at all. And I said, how am I going to build a nursery to grow plants for the gardens in this wasteland?
Mm-hmm.
And the chief conservator of forest had written that in 50 years, Oroville would be uninhabitable.
Mm-hmm.
Because each monsoon, all the topsoil washed into the canyons and into the sea.
Right.
And a farmer couldn't get 2 bags of peanuts on an acre. And that's why they say it would be finished.
Yeah, yes.
And so I found a little grove of mango trees. There were about 12 trees, older trees. And it was Oroville land, and it wasn't far from the center.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote to Mother, and she blessed it as the spot.
Mm-hmm.
We were fortunate because we had a canyon in the back, a huge canyon, where we would put all the poisonous snakes.
Oh, I see.
Because Mother said, don't kill any of them.
Okay.
Just release them into the canyons.
Mm-hmm.
So we did that. And then on the left side, there was a road that was lower than the property, so I could fence it.
Okay.
So it was the spot.
Mm-hmm.
And so we wrote to Mother about these people wanting to join us in the work.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very early Orovillians too. I think Frederick and Shama were
Right,
included.
right,
And, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Had Bob and Deborah also arrived?
Bob and Deborah were at Four Comers.
Four Comers.
Oh, and that's another thing. You see, in order to increase the aquifer, we started bunding all through the Oroville land, whatever we
Right,
owned.
right.
Huh? Initially, the farmers broke it because they said it's our water that's coming down. But then they began to understand that it's percolating down
Right.
into their wells also. And then there were a few people, very, very, very devoted. And Bob and Deborah were amongst them, and they were building check dams to hold back the.
Right.
Kirit is another one at Gaia's
Yes.
Garden.
Right, right.
He's always been doing that, and so now no rainwater runs into the sea anymore.
Right.
That's how much.
Yeah.
So we had asked Mother that question about could they join the work.
Yes. And so Mother answers, if people are sincerely wanting to work in harmony and collaboration, there is no need of asking my permission. With love and blessings.
The key here, of course, is harmony.
Harmony.
Isn't it?
Yes.
That's so important. And, well, I have one thing I wanted to talk about was Madan Lal, who is a good friend of mine. And, he raised millions of dollars for the construction of the Matra Mandir. And we would meet fairly often, and one day I came to him and I said, Madan Lal, all the great epics are numbered every fifth line. I think there should be an edition of Savitri where we number every fifth line. And so he said, all right, let's go to the library and look. And so we went through Virgil and Dante and Homer. Sure enough, Shakespeare, every fifth line. He did it in 1 week, and that edition is still
Available?
in print. Yeah.
I see.
And it's a help. Of course, it's before computers where we could,
right.
or even mobile phones where we could look up a line from a word or two. But but it was helpful at the time. And once he wrote to me and said, would you be able to send me all of Mother's comments on Ganesh in the agenda?
Oh, I see.
And I did it because Ganesh was the one who gave him all of that. Yeah. So today, this is a bit challenging for me because these are two of my past life experiences, and I have maybe not trepidation, but a little reticence about sharing them, but I'd like to read from Sri Aurobindo first, if I may. I've had many extraordinary dreams, visions, and experiences in my life, and I take them all as blessings to open me to the higher worlds, to help purify my nature, and to effect in me the realization of the potentialities that Mother spoke of in my first meeting with her. So Sri Aurobindo now writes, all visions have a significance of one kind or another. This power of vision is very important for the yoga and should not be rejected, although it is not the most important thing. For the most important thing is the change of the consciousness. All other powers like this of vision should be developed without attachment as parts and aids of the yoga. And then he says, visions and voices are not meant for creating faith. They are effective only if one has faith already. Lastly, this power of vision is sometimes inborn and habitual, even without any effort of development. Sometimes it wakes up of itself and becomes abundant, or needs only a little practice to develop. It is not necessarily a sign of spiritual attainment, but usually when by practice of yoga one begins to go inside or live within, the power of subtle vision awakes to a greater or less extent. But this does not always happen easily, especially if one has been habituated to live much in the intellect or in an outward vital consciousness. And he says lastly, usually the visions precede realization. In a way, they prepare it.
Incredible.
So my first one, it just descended like that, and it descended in poetry. And I would ask you if you would read the poem, and goes on to this line. And then we can talk about the next one.
So this one is called In Tibet. When I first read about the butter lamps, I could smell the smoke that filled the spacious halls and darkened tapestries on temple walls. I heard the call of bells in far-off camps, and stars like candles in the frozen night appeared as on the table of a king. I knew the song the spinning prayer wheels sing, and recognized this strange familiar sight, as one who passes through a childhood town remembers lanes forgotten by the rest. No secrets no adult has ever guessed, and every path his feet have travelled down. I saw in vision's clear, awakened eye the coloured flags flapping in the wind, the saffron robes native to my kind, and awesome statues of the deity. I lived and loved in that transparent air, and rode beneath her skies of ideal blue. I died in fields where orange lilies grew. Upon my lips, an ancient Buddhist prayer.
That was the first. Then the second one, equally as powerful. And I shared this with a friend, and I said, everything is telling me that I was King Arthur in a last incarnation, previous incarnation. I said, I don't know about this. I said, it has just come. And my friend looked at me and he said, of course you were. I was Lancelot. Whoa. And so there are two poems that came. Again, they came as poems, which is so interesting, because I knew nothing about poetry.
Mm-hmm. So this you have titled Remembered Fields of Light. Was Arthur, king of Brittany, the Bear, my kin and brother in those ages past? Or was I he who wed fair Guinevere, whose destiny with Lancelot was cast? Why do the pains of centuries occur in moments when my heart remembers her, or when I listen close and hear the call to battle from the mouths of vanished kings, and know my armors sound in that great hall, aware these are no vain imaginings? For I'm there again in another space. On the face of time, my ageless fingers trace crystal cities of teal and amethyst, in glistening light before my ancient eyes, appearing slowly from a silver mist to burn in sovereign splendor through the skies. I smell the earth, the forests rich with peat and tender moss that sinks beneath my feet. I move through these remembered fields of light and lands where beauty lives and love the lone companion through the labyrinth of night, and glimpse the past through which my soul has grown. And the second one is called In Camelot Again. I find myself in Camelot again, with Guinevere unfaithful by my side. Such beauty as my eyes have never seen, this radiance soon to be my bride. Christ's cross is raised in the great cathedral apse, not far removed from the mystic Druid cross that dots the sacred glens and countrysides covered with heather, lichen, fern and moss. O my brave knight and fearless Lancelot, locked with her in passionate embrace, you have robbed me of my only sacred love. My crown is now a symbol of disgrace. I have grown old and known you not, my love, and now with mortal wound my soul must leave this earth, these men, this kingdom built on peace. Though you may weep a while, you shall not grieve, for you are his. And now as I depart, sweet Lancelot, I give her to your care. How human love can tear the heart apart. I breathe my last, this life no more to bear. My kingdom shall go down and night will reign until a greater light descend again. She holds my hand beneath the leaden sky and bends to kiss my lips as I die. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
I have begun making incense holders once again from the dead branches of the service tree. And since this interview will go out to disciples and devotees throughout the world, If a center would like to have them, I certainly will make them and send them. And if you know of people who would like some, just let me know and I'll continue my work. I have done 2,000 already.
Okay.
And one year, I guess it was 4 or 5 years ago, Albert Dobb put them in everyone's prosperity bag.
Lovely.
These are some memories that we haven't touched on yet. There is a man, his name is Lebedang, and the first time I saw his paintings, I was so caught with the beauty of them, very modern, but very, very deep. And so Mary Helen and I went to New Orleans when there was an exhibit, and there he was himself. And I knew he was a spiritual man.
Was he a Native American?
No, he's Vietnamese.
Vietnamese.
Vietnamese. So we said hello, and I presented him with The Adventure of Consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at it, and his eyes just, and he said, "Is it possible to get me a copy in French? Because I read better
Okay.
Vietnamese."
Yes.
So eventually we did. But then he takes out this book of all of his paintings, and he draws something for us and gives it to us as a gift. Well, a long correspondence ensues, especially with his wife, who every letter is a work of art. Even the envelopes are a work of art. And one day she writes to me and she says, "We have met the mother and we love her." How does one know? The other one is a man whom I sang with for some years when I was in the Russian church, and I haven't mentioned him. His name was Vasily Flustikov, and he was in General Wrangel's White Army, and showed me where a sword had gone right through his shoulder. But he was a marvelous choir director. And once my brother and 2 other boys and I, there was one of the festival days, and we sang Blue Moon, that song, you know. And he came up to me afterward and he said, "Never sing anything that is of a lower nature. Always remember to sing from the spiritual height." You see?
Beautiful.
And then there was a man, his name was Simeon Karavayev, and he was born without thumbs. So he'd shake your hand like that, and wonderful, wonderful soul. And he would do those Russian dances at the age of 60, and you could not believe that body. And he had danced with Pavlova.
Oh.
So that was another fantastic memory. Then there was Joseph Heil, who was a disciple of Sri Aurobindo and showed us in New York City things that Sri Aurobindo had sent him. There was a beautiful stone and thing. I didn't have any other contact with him, but I remember that moment, seeing something, being able to touch something that Sri Aurobindo had sent. When I had the Tin Angel restaurant on Bleecker Street, I used to get the most wonderful rye bread from Ratner's restaurant. And the fellow there, Jewish fellow, they were all Jewish people, and the restaurant was known for the waiters abusing their patrons. And people went just for that.
Yeah.
But this fellow was so humorous that I wanted to share a few moments of levity. So he tells a story about a feather boa. And this fellow he sees it in the window of Mo's shop, and he wants to buy it for his wife. And he says, "How much is it, Mo?" And Mo says, "It's $50. $50. So he goes up the street, and Shlomo has a shop, and he says, Shlomo, I saw that feather boa at Mo's shop, but he wants $50. And Shlomo says, I don't have it right now, but I'll charge you $40. So he goes back to Mo, and he says, Mo, Shlomo will give that to me for $40. He says, so what? He said, he doesn't have it right now. And Mo says, when I don't have it, it's $30. Then I'm about to leave to go to Jyoti Priya. He says, son, I'm going to tell you something that will be with you for the rest of your life. Where there's a will, there's a relative. So then I wanted to talk a little bit about Liska Wegelin.
Yes.
You remember? Do you,
Yes,
you
yes, I
remember
remember
Liska?
Liska.
She
Yes.
was our first Orvillian in
Yes.
the nursery, and the first one
Yes.
to pass
She passed away.
too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she was so wonderful, always positive.
She was Dutch, right?
Dutch, yes.
Yes,
Did
yes.
any work at all
Absolutely.
in the nursery.
Absolutely.
And I just wanted to honor her
Yes,
in mentioning
yes.
that. Also, I wanted to.
What about Ruud Lohman? Were you close to Ruud?
Not so close because he was on construction all the time.
Okay.
And we were working on
Right.
with the flowers. But I knew him well.
Yeah. Because he
And-
was among the first workers in the Matrimandi workers camp.
Absolutely. And he wrote, what was it? A House for the Third Millennium.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Quite a book.
Yes. And for an ex-Jesuit, I thought, his journey was amazing.
Amazing, yeah.
Amazing.
Sad end, but I don't
Yes.
want to talk about it. Sarah Laban Shah, who was so wonderful to us, always helping me, along with Amba Premi.
Okay.
You might have remembered
Yes.
them. I remember them with great, great love. This is about the Om Choir, and I think I should speak at greater length about the Om Choir, because people have these extraordinary experiences, and they're very significant of what is happening in the Om Choir, and what has been my life for the past 56 years since Mother gave me the first Adesh and told us that the music was wanting to come down. It's a transformative music, a music of healing and of great power that only, well, next year will be our 15th year for the Om Choir, but I began very early on with people in Oroville.
Mm-hmm.
We had small groups, we would meet under the banyan tree and sing. It wasn't Om then, we were just trying to bring down a new music. The Om was given to me 15 years ago when the Lord said the descent will be through a collective body, through a sacred body, and then it said it would be through the power of Om. So these are two experiences, and I think it's really worth hearing them, and I'd be happy if you could read them. The one happened just last week.
So this is an experience from one of the participants.
Yes,
In the Om
a young
Choir.
lady from Mumbai.
Okay. So she writes, Dear Narad, this is my experience at the Om Choir on Friday. During the second round of singing Om, I suddenly felt like the whole scene in front of me was familiar and very ancient. The small group, well, small compared to the group at Savitri Bhavan, Oroville, sitting in a circle around a dim light in the dark room, and the sounds rising and falling, made me feel that I had seen something like this very long ago. Then I felt that this is a very ancient choir in the temple of Luxor in ancient Egypt. I have never been to Egypt in this life and don't really know what the Temple of Luxor looks like, but that was the name that came up. I had the impression that this temple had very big columns extending several feet above our heads, and a small group was singing around a flame burning in a large bowl. The columns had many images carved on them, but since the temple was dark, only a small part was illumined in the center of the choir. The sounds were falling and rising, and everyone was completely immersed in the vibrations of the Om-like sound. Then suddenly there was no roof, only huge columns rising up, and the night sky with stars above the temple, and the choir continues to sing, their voices rising up to the sky. Out of curiosity, I did a web search today for the Temple of Luxor and found a very, very interesting excerpt on the web from a book called Sacred Space, Sacred Sound, The Acoustic Mysteries of Holy Places, by Susan Elizabeth Hale. I'm attaching 3 screenshots below. Please do read it. If you have a printer, it might be easier to print and read. I'm astonished to find that the Temple of Luxor represents the human body and was built with the equivalent of a cathedral's nave and space for a choir at what would be the nasal level. Thank you so much for the gift of the Om choir, linking the glorious past with the even brighter future that Mother and Sri Aurobindo have envisaged for us.
Now, I told her very briefly after she shared this with me, I told her about the experience of 400 BC of a young man, and the tears just poured from her. Okay. And so I sent the full thing to her. His name is Andreas Mario Müller.
And this is the experience of this man?
Yes.
In 400 BC?
Yeah, that's it, what he's telling me, yes. So.
That night I lay down as usual when after some time a dream started. It is not unusual for me that I become aware of the dreaming and do not wake up but stay with the dream. And that is what I did here. In the dream, I found myself in the French Alps. I saw great big mountains with snow caps. What a beautiful sight to see. The air was so clear and colors so crisp that its beauty could stop your mind at once. Next, I noticed a little chapel out of stone, very solid sandstone built. Now, inside that chapel, looking out through the big arched windows, or I would better say openings, as there was no glass in these side windows, one was extra big and there was colored glass in that one, or what looked like colored glass. The daylight flooding through this opening was so clear and so touching. The most beautiful morning sun I can remember. Crisp, crystal clear air, a little cold. I was feeling that air and light on my skin. A voice was now telling me that it was 400 BC. I thought, how strange that I have been told the time, 400 BC. Now I hear music, beautiful music, nothing I have ever heard before like that. I stayed with the music as long as I could and took it all in. The dream faded. I tried to hold on to it, but soon opened my eyes to find myself right where I started, in bed. When I looked at my watch, I could not see clear. Things were moving in front of my eyes. In an attempt to get up, I found out that my sense of balance was not good, and things were moving up and down in front of my eyes now. I stayed in bed, and after a little, the dizziness got much better and I could get up without risking a fall. Later that evening, before meditation, I told my trusted friend Brian about my experience. Brian is a monk since 45 years. Anyway, he asked me some questions about the music. He wanted a description, and I told him that it sounded sweet to my ears, not much tonal movement at all, but much like layers of sound, not what you usually hear on the radio anywhere. I did not know what instrument would produce a sound like that. Some months later, when I was helping at the Sri Aurobindo Om conference on opening day, there was an Om choir to be assembled. I was never part of a choir like that. When the whole thing started, after some instructions and voice warm-up, I was floored. There it was, the instrument that makes the sound I had heard in my dream. About 100 people singing, making the sound Om. That assembled instrument made the same sounds I was hearing in my dream back then. I told Narad about that, and he asked me to write my experience out for him. So here it is. I'd like to add that it was a wonderful experience to be part of the Om choir that day. Wonderful.
I just wanted to share with you and with those who are watching the books that I have written. This was published by the ashram, Homage to the Service Tree. And I've written 2 books on, well, you see the service tree, I've talked about it before and how Mother gave me her blessings to take care of it for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it is beyond any question the most sacred tree in all the world. And the banyan at the center of Oroville is the second most sacred tree in the world, because both have been, through Mother's grace, planted. This one planted by her, planted under her guidance.
Yes.
And I tell all the stories of the service tree there and those who were involved with it. So.
And who are the paintings by? The paintings? In
Usha, some of them by Usha and others. I found them sometimes in, like one was in Reg's guest house. Beautiful. And I photographed it. And so that was one. Through Sri Aurobindo's largesse and his grace, I've written some 32 books now that are all in publication or going into publication. This is the latest one, Poems to the Divine Mother. Mm-hmm. And then this one is Songs to the Mystic Earth.
Mm-hmm.
I also wrote the Lexicon of an Infinite Mind, which is taken from a line in Savitri. Sri Aurobindo writes, the first lexicon of an infinite mind, translating the, I don't remember, wonders or something of eternal bliss.
So these are all words that were used by Sri Aurobindo? These are all words
these are all definitions of, so there's a story here that's very interesting. My first tier, shall we say,
yes,
was to find all definitions of these words given by Sri Aurobindo, our mother.
Okay.
The second tier was all definitions given by a reputable dictionary.
Okay.
So I used Oxford English Dictionary. And I had about 3,000 to 5,000 words from Oxford. And I wrote to them, and the gentleman wrote back very kindly. We ask 300 pounds per definition. Well, that did that. I had to redo the whole book according to, like, the Webster's and other dictionaries that are now available free on the internet.
Right.
The second part was the supplement to the Lexicon of an Infinite Mind, and these were the answers of Amal Kiran, Nolini, Madhav Pandit, and others. Jumur did excellent. Beautiful, beautiful definitions. So, very inspirational book also.
Beautiful.
And this is from one who never studied writing. These, of course, I did also 10 books I've written on themes in Savitri. For example, beauty, or nature, or truth and falsehood. And so I would go through Savitri again and again and again to find out where these themes were. Art, so many, 10 volumes I've done of those. And the latest books are now at the publisher, and I guess they're the culmination of my writing, I guess. The first one is called Flowers for the Soul, and it contains quotations from hundreds of sages and seers throughout the centuries, along with my photography and that of Dakshina at Sri Aurobindo Sadhana Pitam in Lodi. And at the very end, there's a section on mother's significances. And the other volume, which has just gone to the printer, is Roses for the Soul. And my photography of roses, a very interesting story there. There's a Plumeria Society of Southern California, where I go, and I think I've told you these stories. Well, just a quarter of a kilometer away was the finest rose garden in San Diego, and I would go early morning and work until the sun was too hot. And so I did all the photography of the roses. Same thing as Flowers for the Soul, with quotations from all these great sages and seers, everything of Mother and Sri Aurobindo on it. And then at the very end, all of the roses that Mother named, and there are many of them.
Right.
So I will present you with those two books when they come available. And just a few poems of mine. New man emerging. Flesh upon ingenious rack of bone am I, neighbor to the galaxies, and in my fragile house of form alone, wed to earth and God's infinities. I am the flower at the precipice edge, the turning of the earth by worm and vole, 1,000 daily births by nature's pledge, to carry forth the progress of the soul. Blindly I grew, and largely unaware of other selves, satellites of my sun, yet founded not, for the angel of God was there, to guide and to protect a work begun in former lives and wrought through pain and death, that waking now I might participate, as conscious man inhale a conscious breath, and on the future body meditate. Now the consecrated life begins, emerging from the chrysalis of night, throwing off my virtues and my sins, I spread abroad my gossamer wings of light. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Because Sri Aurobindo, through his divine grace, has poured poetry through me, I'd like to end with these. A light on earth. I looked upon the outer sheath I wore, a countenance well known, both friend and foe, yet stranger to a wisdom held before, beyond the many births so long ago. I did not ask of God my soul to fill with moving poetry, nor tore my breast in anguish when the muse's voice was still. Beyond myself, I knew that I was blessed. A moment came when a high voice was heard that counseled me to find the secret cave where the sacred Om, first and final word, uplifted me as on a giant wave. And in that hour of divine largesse, awaking from a momentary trance, I saw the child God roam and play at ease. His face I saw in every human glance, and in the presence of a transformed earth, returned to beauty from the grasp of man, nature looked on all with joyous mirth. Like a deer pursued who all the hounds outran, I was at peace, and all the world was still, yet vibrant with a golden inner core, guided by a great unerring will, a light so vast one must kneel to adore. This universe in wondrous vision seen at the cosmic edge where night and day are one. A place recalled where once my soul had been, a light on earth more brilliant than the sun. And the last two. Mirror of God's delight. I walked in fields where flowers spoke to me, and all that mind might dream could not compare with the wonder and the ecstasy of the gathered beauty I saw blooming there. No cloud appeared in the blue of Krishna's sky. As from the body's shell my soul arose, it watched me live and it watched me die. Where, with nature and the earth in deep repose, I found the silence that contains all sound, beheld a light that does not shadow cast. In that moment when the spirit sword unbound, released in freedom from the clinging past, I saw all life divine through inner sight, and all the world a mirror of God's delight.
Beautiful.
Thank you. And the last one, Krishna, beloved. O night, bereft of moon, the stars shall guide my steps upon the winding roads of time. No taint of darkness ultimately can hide, nor veil from sight the mystery sublime. I found the fruited grove where the God-child plays and slumbers in this hidden cave of mine. Opening late the secret book of days, I befriended him as I cleansed the vaulted shrine. In dream-like fields amongst the golden kine, I spy his blue-white radiance abroad, fluting to rapturous bloom this earth divine, Krishna, beloved, friend and guide and Lord.
Beautiful. So thank you, Narad, for these beautiful experiences that came out as poems.
Thank you so much. I had never done an interview before.
No, it's been most enriching.
Thank you, Maurice.